Okay, well, thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it. And we value the distribution work of Tan Tung Audio, our authorized distributor for Vietnam. So Magico as a company is 15 years old now, and we're based in Hayward, California. And we have a 30,000 square foot factory where we do all of the engineering work, the design, production, and shipping from that factory. Our philosophy is to build a device, a loudspeaker, that gets out of its own way, and quality in live presence of music. We search the world for materials to make our own transducer designs and enclosure materials that really allow an enclosure for the drivers themselves, but we use materials that don't store energy to allow the transducers to work into the room without the negative effects of an enclosure. Well, right from the very beginning, we knew the benefit of using aluminum as an enclosure material to eliminate resonance storage. And initially, when we had a much smaller company and smaller factory, so it was cost prohibitive. So we decided to use laminate birch and apply multiple layers of birch and create an enclosure that had incredible mass, was incredibly stiff, and was dampable. As the company expanded and we moved into a bigger factory where we had CNC machining capabilities in-house, we were able to use aluminum and do a lot of that work as far as machining at the factory in-house with our own machinists, or work with other companies that could do extrusions. So for like the S series, for instance, the S1 and S3, we're using extruded tubes. And for all other models, we use aluminum that we machine in-house. At Magico, we want to have complete control over the end result, which is a presentation of almost live music in its sound quality. So we design and engineer our own transducers, and as far as the cone material, we've elected to use carbon, and today we apply a layer of graphene onto the carbon for the optimal stiffness to mass ratio. The Q element of the cone material is perfected so it doesn't obscure the information as far as the bandwidth frequency that we want to achieve from a certain driver, whether it's mid-range or bass. We want to optimize the driver for that particular frequency range and optimize the stiffness to mass ratio. So we want to have an extremely lightweight cone that's incredibly stiff, so the pistonic motion is extremely fast. Well, first of all, the design of the enclosure follows the same principles as our main full-range loudspeakers. So we use a sealed chamber. The drivers are our own design. They're incredibly stiff and lightweight, so they move very fast, and they keep up with the speed of the main left and right loudspeaker. In our setups, we run the main speaker full range, and we figure out where in the room to get optimal sound from the left and right loudspeaker. Then we fold the subwoofer into that field and calibrate it with our own DSP and electronic crossover control. And that pairing, raising the low frequency up into the stereo sound field of the main speaker, helps to linearize the bass of the main left and right speaker, and it improves the dimensional sound field of the overall staging in the room. So the benefit of a Magico sub-satellite setup is that you don't hear the sub, but you feel it. That's really the benefit. So again, augmenting the left and right stereo sound field and expanding the dimensional sound field with low bass and room pressurization. Okay, it's a good question, and subwoofers are very important in a stereo playback system, again to linearize the bass output of the stereo sound field from the left and right loudspeakers. We always recommend the use of 2 subs in each corner or toward the corner of the room in the firing field of the speaker to recreate a stereo sound field of bass. So that's very important. Many subwoofer applications, they only use 1. And typically it's off to the corner, so it's distracting for your ear and pulls signal away from the stereo sound field of the left and right speaker. So we recommend 2 subwoofers in any installation. If you're using 1, it should be in the center of the stereo sound speakers. It's interesting, part of psychoacoustics, if you extend low bass frequency, your ear perceives a cleaner, more resolute mid and high frequency. Even though you've done nothing to change the left and right loudspeaker, your ear will pick up and sense a more open sound field if you increase the depth of the bass energy. So subwoofers can really be beneficial if they're installed and set up properly with the main stereo speakers and give you a much bigger sound field in the room, for sure. Well, the M6 right now is our flagship loudspeaker model. It's a floor-standing 3-way. All the drivers are our own design. We are using a 28mm diamond-coated beryllium dome tweeter, carbon graphene mid-range cone, 6-inch, and then a new driver, which is a 10.5-inch bass driver, 3 of those in a single monocoque enclosure made of carbon. And the benefit of the carbon is that we can shape an enclosure out of one single piece of carbon, which is layers and layers and layers of carbon formed into a monocoque enclosure. And we can optimize the internal air volume and yet have a very sculpted exterior shape that actually is smaller than if we made it out of aluminum because of the machining and the right angles that would have to be affected. The M6 has not one right angle internally or externally, allowing for 0 diffraction. So there's not one area of comb filtering or diffraction from a right angle edge on that speaker. So the sound field with the dispersion characteristics of the energy radiating from the transducers is unobscured. So you get a very, very 3-dimensional sound field from the M6. It's really a work of art as far as sound reproduction. The enclosure is incredibly stiff. We do the machining for the aluminum. The front baffle, the rear spine, the top cap and base are all our own work in aluminum, but the enclosure, the monocoque enclosure, is pure carbon. And the benefit of that is that we can work the carbon easier than aluminum. However, the carbon has the same properties as aluminum. It's incredibly stiff, it's got mass, and it's dampable. And those are 3 very important criteria when you're building an enclosure, when you're considering materials to build an enclosure of it. Well, it's a brand new product. We just announced it yesterday into the world market, and it's already been received so well. Again, in the A series, we wanted to create a product category that made Magico more accessible to a wider audience of music enthusiasts. And the A5 will actually include some new developments in transducer designs that we've never done before. And this is very exciting for us because as an engineering company committed to the reproduction of true sound, we are always striving to make the next best transducer or enclosure using radically different materials to achieve perfection in its particular job assignment. So if it's a tweeter that requires a certain material, the first audio company to design a transducer, a cone, using graphene. Now graphene is very expensive, it's highly conductive. We could only get graphene in a certain quantity at first, so we could only make a small 6-inch driver, then it was 9, now it's 10.5. So as it becomes more available, graphene, we will apply that or use that where we can to yield a better result in a transducer design. So carbon with graphene, much lighter weight cone, much stiffer. So the pistonic activity is much faster compared to previous cone designs that were heavier and a little slower. So this allows us to achieve a much better recreation of what we determined to be live, or as close to live as possible, with better transducer designs using radically different materials. So, looking at the world markets, as far as Asia is concerned, it's a very strong marketplace for us. And we have certain pockets like Hong Kong, China, based on sheer mass. It's a very good territory for us. Japan, very good. Smaller countries, Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, these are up and coming areas of very strong growth. And I think that speaks to their economy as well, where they see industry growing and the GDP forecasts are very strong. So we're also seeing that affecting us in a high quality, expensive audiophile type product where people have more wherewithal to make purchases of M series and S series and even A series. So we're expanding our opportunities in all of these markets, and certainly Vietnam is a strong market for us. It's always of interest for us, but right now we're sticking to hardwire designs. It's much more reliable, and I think that in the future, as wireless gets better and improves, perhaps there's an opportunity there, but right now we're sticking with solid connection, hardwire connection, much better.
Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.